Oh no! What is this?
In my worn-out state right after giving birth, I screamed while clutching my phone. After 2 years of marriage, we finally had our child. I had eagerly awaited celebrating the birth with my beloved husband. However, he vanished without a trace just before the delivery. Even when the labor started, I couldn't reach him, and he never showed up at the hospital, even after our daughter let out her first cry. To make matters worse, I received a message from him saying, "I'm tired of living.
Please, don't do anything rash."
All I could do was pray for his safety, but my husband never returned. And then, 25 years later, I would come to learn the truth in an unexpected way. I, Kathy, got married at 26. My husband, Steve, was 28. We sometimes argued, but that was proof that we were doing well as a couple. We clashed because we cared about each other, and at least I believed that we were supporting each other well. However, 2 years after our marriage, our relationship began to take a turn for the worse. "Hey, these shoes weren't here before, right? Did you buy something new again?" Steve replied.
So what? It's my money. I can do what I want with it.
"You say that, but you've already spent quite a bit." When I pointed out the new brand name shoes at the entrance, Steve frowned in annoyance and turned away. In truth, Steve had always been a bit loose with money since we started dating. After we got married, we agreed that I would manage all the bank accounts because leaving it to him meant we never had any savings. Despite this, at that time, brand name shoes and sneakers were increasing in our house. When I asked where the money was coming from, he would always evade, saying things like, "I made it from stocks," or "I won at the slot machines." I was worried he might be borrowing from somewhere, but I couldn't confront him strongly. Alongside the growing collection of brand name items, there was another thing that bothered me. Steve muttered in a low voice.
You're always restricting me. Don't you trust me at all?
Maybe he was fed up with my suspicious gaze. He slouched and disappeared into the bedroom. Seeing him so dejected made my chest ache. What concerned me was the gloomy expression he sometimes showed. The Steve I knew would have been irritated and rebellious towards me, but at that time, he didn't show any of those signs. I'm not satisfied with the money situation, but I'm a bit worried about Steve's attitude. Maybe he was troubled by something at work. Was he shopping to relieve stress? That thought crossed my mind, and I couldn't say more than small complaints. And then, amidst my already existing anxiety, an event occurred that escalated my husband's strange behavior. It happened when I found out I was pregnant. We had talked about wanting children since the early days of our marriage, so I was over the moon.
"Hey, the baby is finally coming."
Huh? Oh, yeah. That's great.
However, Steve averted his eyes from me with a distant attitude. From that point on, Steve started going out more, almost as if he was avoiding me. Not only on days off, but even on weekdays, he wouldn't come home until late at night. Eventually, his excuses for business trips and travels increased, and he started staying out overnight more often. "Hey, I understand work is tough, but could you come home a bit earlier? I'm feeling anxious about the first childbirth." But even when I pointed it out, he didn't respond, dismissing it as business dinner or can't hang out with friends once the baby is born. Steve seemed positive about having a child before, but does he realize what it means to be a father? Naturally, I still felt uneasy about this, but it was a fact that once the baby was born, we wouldn't have much time together, so his words made sense. Above all, I was concerned about Steve's persistently gloomy mood, but without confronting him directly, I could only observe quietly. However, delaying addressing the issue was a mistake. As the due date approached, an incident finally occurred. It was late at night on a day when I was in my last month of pregnancy, and I was asleep. Suddenly, my stomach began to ache, and I woke up. Labor had started. I need to contact Steve. It hurts. As usual, I sent a text to my husband, who wasn't at home, but there was no response. So, I went to the hospital alone in a taxi. From then on, I was solely focused on giving birth, and although I don't remember much, my efforts paid off, and a healthy baby girl was born safely. However, our joy over our child's birth was short-lived. Both sets of parents, with serious expressions, rushed to the hospital. And then, they told me that they couldn't reach Steve. From then on, the mood shifted dramatically, and we began to search for my husband with unsettled feelings. Despite my postpartum condition, I contacted our mutual friends and his workplace. But no one knew where he was, and to my surprise, his workplace reported that Steve had already resigned days ago. I didn't hear anything about that. What's going on? What's happening? Amidst the confusion, a notification popped up on my tightly held phone. When I looked, it was none other than a message from Steve. Feeling relieved that there was some response, I opened the message, but my relief turned into shock when I read its contents. I've been thinking for a while, but I'm not qualified to raise a child as pathetic as me. Living has become unbearable. Please don't look for me. That's what it said. My in-laws screamed at the ominous message. As for me, I couldn't believe it, staring at the screen of my phone in disbelief. Certainly, there were times when he seemed strange, but I never imagined he was feeling so cornered.
What is this? Please, don't do anything rash.
But my plea was in vain, and my husband never returned. Moreover, as a result of reporting to the police, his shoes were found lined up on a nearby cliff. This led the police to suspect suicide, and the investigation continued, but his body was never found, and eventually, the search was called off. Thus, my husband left us, leaving behind only our beloved daughter, disappearing before our eyes. Why? Why didn't I listen to him more? For a while, consumed by regret and guilt, I couldn't do anything but cry. However, I couldn't continue like that forever. A few months after the incident, I somehow started working to raise my daughter. Despite not giving up on Steve and frequently gathering information, there was no progress. Balancing childcare and work was tough, but to ensure we never lose our family again, I poured all my love into my daughter as much as possible. And so, amidst the busy days, I realized that a whopping 25 years had passed since my husband had disappeared. At 53 years old, I was living with my 25-year-old daughter, Emily, who had grown up beautifully despite being raised in a single-parent household. To contribute to the household, Emily started her singing career in her teens and transitioned into acting, becoming quite a success in the industry. Thanks to her, we never faced financial difficulties, and we enjoyed a happy life together. However, secretly, I still harbored feelings for my husband. If the three of us, Emily, Steve, and I, could have lived together, how happy would we have been? Despite feeling conflicted, I didn't want to burden my daughter with unnecessary expectations, so I simply told her that her father had passed away. Yet, the despair from when my husband disappeared had certainly lingered in my heart. However, one day, Emily confided in me with a serious expression that she wanted to introduce someone important to her. Listening closely to the unusual atmosphere, it turned out that Emily was considering marriage with an actor from her generation, Will. Furthermore, his mother happened to be the president of a talent agency. While I couldn't deny feeling surprised, I enthusiastically nodded along with my daughter's earnest words. If he's the one you've chosen, I'll support you. No matter who he is. Given that she was a celebrity marrying an actor, I could easily anticipate the public's reaction and the challenges ahead. Nonetheless, after what happened with my husband, I had firmly resolved to stand by my daughter no matter what. Moreover, there was no reason to oppose her marriage, especially considering how excitedly she shared the news despite her nervousness. Relieved by my response, Emily showed me a photo of his family on her phone and expressed her desire for us to meet. However, at that moment, is this? I gasped as I looked at the photo that had caught my eye. And the unbelievable scene captured in that photo would drastically change my life. 2 weeks later, I was heading to the meeting place with Emily for the introduction. We were both probably wearing more stern expressions than usual. While nerves were certainly a factor, there was another significant reason for our seriousness. If our suspicions are correct, we can't just let this go. But could this be some kind of mistake? With these tumultuous emotions in my heart, I stepped into the restaurant designated as the venue. As it was a meeting between celebrities, we were ushered into a private room with strict privacy measures. And when the waiter opened the door, I was met with the sight of a certain person. At that moment, the complex emotions that had been building up inside me overflowed from my heart. So, you were alive after all. I couldn't help but exclaim loudly, and both Will, Emily's boyfriend, and his mother, looked at me in surprise. However, the most shocked of all was the man who stood there, Will's father. Though his hairstyle, beard, physique, and clothing had changed, there was no mistaking it for me, his wife. I'll need an explanation for this. From you. With anger in my voice, Will and his mother stared a hole through Steve, my husband. As it turned out, the father of Emily's boyfriend, as seen in the family photo she showed me, was none other than my husband, who had disappeared from my life before. While it was a relief to know he was alive, the idea of him being the father of my daughter's fiancé was beyond coincidence. Initially, I considered the possibility of a striking resemblance to someone else, but it seemed my eyes were correct. However, it appeared Steve was intending to play dumb.
Well, who are you? What's this about? You're being rude out of nowhere.
But his eyes were shifting, and beads of sweat streamed down his forehead. His evident discomfort undeniably confirmed his identity as my husband. It's useless trying to deny it. You can't fool me anymore. I confronted him, my tone growing stronger involuntarily.
May I have a little explanation, please?
Then, Will's mom, Beth, who had been bewildered until then, opened her mouth, seemingly unable to bear the situation any longer. Though she seemed shocked and struggling to grasp the situation, her calm inquiry revealed her professionalism as the president of a major talent agency. After taking a deep breath to calm myself, I looked her straight in the eye and pulled out some documents from my bag. Steve and I are married, and this is the proof. From there, I disclosed everything about his relationship with me to Will and Beth. On the day Emily showed me the family photo of her fiancé, she seemed suspicious of my reaction. So, I finally told her the truth about her father for the first time. I explained about the message hinting at suicide he sent on the day of our daughter's birth, the uncertainty about whether he was alive or dead, and how the man in the photo looked identical to him. After hearing everything from me, Emily proposed hiring a detective with her own money because she couldn't marry someone with the same father as herself. And after waiting for a week, the investigation results matched the time when my husband disappeared with the time he started living with Beth. With plenty of other evidence, it was confirmed that Will's father was indeed Steve. Beth had been staring at the report from the detective agency with Will for a while, but suddenly, she looked up.
Indeed. I was opposed to marrying him officially, and this seems to be the reason.
She said, glaring at Steve with anger in her eyes.
I met him when my son was 2 years old. Will is his stepson.
Then, Beth explained to us how she came to live with him. According to her, she had recently lost her husband in an accident and was working hard while taking care of the young Will. She happened to meet Steve, who was kind to her. Since Will is a little older than Emily, he probably started cheating on her before my pregnancy became known, at the point when his behavior became suspicious.
Of course, I heard he was single. So, we had something like a common-law marriage.
Beth quietly expressed her anger, glaring at Steve. It seemed my husband refused to marry officially because of his complicated family. Who was he to abandon his wife and child, then comfortably move in with another family? Then, at the next moment, perhaps realizing he couldn't keep lying anymore, Steve sighed heavily.
It's enough. Shut up. I couldn't live with you, always restricting my spending.
Of course, you're Steve after all. You disappeared out of nowhere, and then you end up in a nice position, don't you, Dot?
Yeah, that's right. I could have been the husband of a president and the father of a famous actor. Damn it, but you had to ruin it.
Then, he began to speak as if he had broken a dam, revealing everything about what had happened. Steve, who was reckless with money, was indeed unhappy with me managing the finances. And when he found out by chance that Beth was wealthy, he decided to switch immediately. He didn't want to pay alimony or child support, so he chose pretending suicide instead of divorce. He planned to settle everything while I was unable to move due to childbirth. Perhaps he had been contemplating this plan even before my pregnancy, hence his lack of concern. The increase in branded items was probably due to Beth buying them for him.
To be safe, I changed my appearance through weight loss and a makeover, and as a house husband, I spent most of my time indoors so the police wouldn't catch me.
His selfish excuses made anger bubble up from the depths of my being. For 25 years since my husband disappeared, there hadn't been a single day when I didn't think about Steve. I felt guilty for having pursued him. Although I couldn't do anything for him anymore, I had resolved to carry this regret with me for the rest of my life. However, when the truth came out, it turned out that all of it, the message from Steve, the shoes on the cliff, was all a lie to deceive me. While I was thinking about Steve, he had already abandoned me and our daughter and was living a luxurious life with another family. And I wasn't the only one who was angry with him.
I'm disappointed in you. I had a debt of gratitude to repay, but I didn't think you were such a person.
Beth's cold words were followed by Will's.
You barely did anything around the house anyway.
And he looked at Steve with disdain. Especially for Will, Steve was someone who hurt both his mother and his girlfriend. Perhaps, he couldn't forgive him so easily. And I felt the same way. This will be in the tabloids tomorrow. I delivered the final blow to Steve, who was faltering and glared with anger by everyone in the room.
What? Tabloids?
Will may be a famous actor, but Emily, the daughter you abandoned, is also a famous actress. As I spoke, Steve, who had turned blue, was quietly being stared at by his daughter next to him. After discussions with the agency, Emily decided to publicly announce her marriage to her boyfriend. At that time, she also explained about this unbelievable series of events. It seems the article will be published tomorrow. You won't be able to show your face in public anymore. Even though the marriage of a successful actor and actress was already big news, if the father was involved in such an incident, the media wouldn't stay silent. Perhaps from now on, Steve would have no privacy left.
Of course, you'll have to leave our house.
No, I don't want to. Please, reconsider. What am I supposed to do from now on?
Perhaps realizing how frightening the situation had become, Steve clung embarrassingly to me and Beth. Seeing his pitiful state, I felt as though I had been released from a curse that had haunted me for years. It took time, but I no longer needed to worry about my husband who had disappeared. I don't know. Maybe you can go and live with another family? Beth, Emily, Will, and I looked at each other, and leaving Steve behind, we left the place, planning to have another calm meeting somewhere else. Later, after 25 years, I divorced my husband. Since the announcement of my daughter's engagement, Steve has been quickly identified by her and Will's fans. Now he's being chased by tabloids and can't walk around town. Even though he hadn't been working for many years, finding a new job seems unlikely for a while. Being evicted from the house he lived in and unable to return to his parents' house, he's currently wandering the streets. On the other hand, Emily and Will got married. While being blessed by society, they also received sympathy for their father's situation, which actually increased their work opportunities. Now, I can live with a clear and cheerful heart. I plan to watch over their success and slowly enjoy this happy time. How was this video? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Well then, let's meet again in the next video.
Upon arriving at my in-laws' house, my husband greeted me with a smirk.
Just in time. The results arrived, so come in.
I wondered what he meant by results as I followed him into the living room. There, my husband placed an envelope containing documents on the table. What's this?
It's the DNA test results. Now your affair will be proven.
He grinned and spread the contents of the envelope on the table. My name is Mia, a 27-year-old homemaker. I've been married to my husband, Oliver, for 2 years, and I'm currently pregnant. Earlier, I experienced intense labor pains and was rushed to the hospital. However, several hours have passed since then, and I just gave birth. After enduring painful contractions, I finally saw the incredibly cute form of my newborn. I felt a sudden release of tension and relief that everything went well. The relief and joy must be overwhelming. But as soon as the relief settled in, exhaustion hit me like a wave. After enduring labor for a full day without sleep, I desperately wanted to rest. The nurse said she'd take the baby to clean up, but I kept an eye on her. My husband had rushed over after work to be there for the birth, but he hadn't said much afterward. At that moment, fatigue clouded my senses, and I didn't notice anything amiss with my husband. The nurse returned, cradling my baby in her arms. She turned to my husband and said,
Please hold your child.
But he made no move to take the baby, instead locking eyes with me and saying something I couldn't quite hear. Exhaustion clouded my senses. I was still recovering from my own procedures, unable to focus on his words. What did you say? I asked, but he left the room without answering, never once holding our child. I wondered what had happened as the nurse and doctor exchanged uncomfortable glances. Confused and drained, I drifted off to sleep. Afterward, I found myself in the hospital room, and my child had been taken to the neonatal unit. The next day, my husband didn't visit the hospital at all. According to the nurse, he had been there and met our child, but he avoided my room. Then, an unexpected message arrived from him.
Let's discuss divorce once you're discharged.
I couldn't comprehend it. Why now? When I asked for an explanation, he remained silent. Shocked and physically weakened, my hospital stay extended. Finally discharged, I returned home, but my husband was nowhere to be found. Glancing around the room, I noticed several missing clothes from the closet. He must have gone back to his parents' house, I thought, feeling even more despondent. I messaged him, I've been discharged now. His reply came.
Let's discuss this Saturday at 1 p.m. at my parents' place.
What was going on? Had I done something? As the day of our discussion approached, I brought my own parents along to my in-laws' house. Fortunately, my brother's wife, who had experience with childbirth, agreed to look after my baby. When we arrived, my husband greeted us with a smirk.
Just in time. The results arrived, so come in.
He said, leading us into the living room. He placed an envelope containing documents on the table. What's this?
It's the DNA test results.
Huh?
You look like you're getting nervous.
Huh? Well, why did you even check something like that?
Well, now your affair will be proven.
With that, he grinned and spread the contents of the envelope on the table. Among the documents in the envelope, the top one succinctly stated that the child was indeed my husband's. He looked at me in disbelief, exclaiming,
Look at this. The child and I are biologically related. What? Why? How can this be my child? It can't be.
His thoughts remained a mystery to me. My in-laws tried to calm him down, while my parents and I sat there, dumbfounded. Finally, as my husband regained some composure, I asked, What do you want? Why did you insist on a DNA test? Did you really think I was having an affair? His response shocked me further.
Well, when the nurse tried to hand the baby to me, I noticed it didn't resemble me. I wondered if you were having an affair.
Wait, you said that at the time? I asked. He replied,
Your face turned pale when I mentioned it.
No, I was just surprised and asked for clarification. I retorted. He insisted.
You were caught off guard because it hit home, didn't you?
I was furious. Do you realize the grueling conditions I endured during childbirth? According to the doctor, I lost a lot of blood and was anemic. Given that, it's natural for my complexion to be poor. His stammered response didn't satisfy me. I've been telling you all along, I haven't cheated. When I confronted my husband about why he had such suspicions, he revealed that before my childbirth, he had been researching various aspects of the process online. During his research, he came across the term brood parasitism, which refers to a situation where a wife intentionally conceives a child with someone other than her husband. Apparently, he stumbled upon numerous accounts of women allegedly attempting this. One particular post caught his attention. A man described how, during the birth of his child, he had noticed that the baby's face looked nothing like his own. When he jokingly remarked to his wife, "You know, this child doesn't resemble me at all," she had panicked unexpectedly. Intrigued, he secretly conducted a DNA test, and unsurprisingly, the results confirmed that the child was not biologically his. The post concluded by suggesting that right after childbirth, when women are exhausted and their minds are foggy, it's an opportune time for such revelations. I scoffed at my husband's insinuations. "So you thought I was up to something? Ridiculous."
Well, the baby didn't look anything like me.
I challenged him. "Are you serious? Take a look at this photo." I showed him a picture of our baby taken on my smartphone. Even my in-laws, sitting beside my husband, scrutinized their grandchild's features.
Oh my.
My mother-in-law exclaimed and retrieved what looked like an old photo album. She pointed to a picture.
This. It's Oliver when he was born.
My husband stammered.
Wait, our child looks just like me.
My father-in-law chimed in.
They're practically identical.
I emphasized. "Now do you understand? This child is undeniably yours." My husband slumped his shoulders, crestfallen, while my in-laws tried to console him. I realized that my feelings toward my husband had completely cooled. Regarding divorce and child support, I began. His response was a surprise.
Huh? Well, we don't need to divorce, since the child is mine.
What? After baselessly suspecting me, you have the nerve to say that? I retorted. He apologized profusely, and my in-laws, flustered, chimed in.
Mia, our foolish son is truly sorry. But could you find it in your heart to forgive him?
I requested some time to think it over and promised to arrange another meeting later. However, one thing bothered me, my husband's smugness when he doubted my fidelity. Even as he spread out the DNA test results, he wore a triumphant expression. Normally, if a wife were accused of infidelity, anger would be the natural response. I promptly hired a private investigator to look into my husband's actions. Within 2 weeks, I discovered his misdeeds. He had been having an affair with a coworker, and their relationship was quite intimate. Essentially, my husband assumed that if I were unfaithful, he could divorce me on my fault, claim alimony, and be with his lover. When he saw my pale face during the confrontation, he must have thought his plan was working. Little did he know that I would uncover his secrets. I immediately contacted my husband and headed to my in-laws' house with the documents.
It would take too much time to make me wait for 2 weeks.
He seemed irritable. How could the one who had wrongly suspected me now act so arrogantly? I felt compelled to teach him a lesson.
So, Mia, have you reconsidered divorce?
I apologize to you both, but I still want a divorce. My husband exclaimed.
What?
My mother-in-law added.
Well, that's...
My father-in-law questioned.
Why? Oliver has genuinely reflected on his actions.
My mother-in-law continued.
Yes, even during the separation, he mentioned feeling remorseful about what he put you through. Mia.
I see. I replied. Then, my husband unexpectedly became defensive.
After making me wait so long, you think you can just leave? Besides, how will you, an unemployed housewife, raise the child alone? You can't survive without my income.
How could he be so brazen? especially after his own infidelity. Why are you so desperate to avoid divorce? Is it because you don't want to pay child support? I challenged. He stammered.
What are you saying? It's my child. I don't want to be apart.
My mother-in-law interjected.
Mia, that's absurd. Do you really think Oliver doesn't care for his own child?
As my in-laws began to question my actions, I decided it was time to get to the heart of the matter. Please look at this, I said, spreading several photos from the envelope. The images captured the moment when my husband entered his affair partner's apartment and later, when they entered a hotel. My in-laws were speechless.
What is this?
My mother-in-law asked. These are evidence of Oliver's infidelity, I replied. My husband's face turned pale. In essence, he deceived me first. He suspected me of cheating, hoping that if I were unfaithful and the child wasn't his, it would work in his favor. But I was completely innocent, so he panicked. Even if we divorced and he ended up with his affair partner, he didn't want to pay child support. My husband seemed to realize the truth, and his complexion grew even worse. Regardless, I can't continue with you. Please sign this divorce agreement. I'll handle alimony and child support through a lawyer, I insisted. Reluctantly, my husband signed the divorce papers under pressure from my in-laws. They apologized repeatedly, but the real culprit was their foolish son. Thank you for everything, I looked at my in-laws and said before leaving their home. Afterward, the divorce was successfully finalized, and I managed to claim substantial alimony from my ex-husband and his affair partner. Additionally, I secured monthly child support payments from my ex-husband. Unfortunately for them, their actions have consequences, and they now face cold stares from colleagues at work. You see, my ex-husband had already spread rumors about me being unfaithful at his workplace. However, the truth revealed that he was the one who had cheated, causing his reputation to plummet among coworkers. Interestingly, I learned about this from an acquaintance at my ex-husband's workplace. Armed with this information, I filed a defamation lawsuit against him, which resulted in additional compensation for the damage to my reputation. As for my ex-husband, he found himself drowning in debt, unable to afford his affair partner's company anymore. She, too, felt uncomfortable and eventually quit her job. Despite his discomfort, my ex-husband continues to pay alimony and child support, trapped in a living hell of his own making. It serves you right. On the other hand, I managed to secure an office job through a friend, and I'm thriving as a single parent. My son is growing up beautifully and is incredibly adorable. While I'd like to explore romance again someday, I'll wait until things settle down a bit. For now, I'm focused on working hard to provide for my child's future.
How did you find this story? Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Until next time.